So remember, polyatomic ion is an ion that is made up of more than one ion. As poly means many, so polyatomic means many atom ions. So we've looked at these before. We've seen them with your bromates and your perbromates and the chemistry to memorize. But another name for a lot of polyatomic ions, especially those that contain oxygen, is an oxyanion. So an oxyanion is a polyatomic ion composed of an element bonded to one or more oxygen atoms. Now, when we're looking at groups of atoms, so like your chlors or your bromes or your sulfs or your carbs, when they all have the same element, you change the name based on the amount of oxygen. So the ion with the most oxygen atoms, you will use the prefix per and the suffix ate. The ion with more oxygen atoms is just use ate. Fewer oxygen atoms is ite, and fewest is hypo. So if you were looking at the rule followers, per and ate will have 4 oxygens, ate will have 3 oxygens, ite will have 2 oxygens, and hypo and ite will have 1 oxygen. If you're looking at the rule breakers or your troublemakers, per and ate will have 5 oxygens, ate will have 4 oxygens, ite will have 3 oxygens, and hypo and ite will have 2 oxygens. So let's look at the just examples. So for the rule followers, notice they all have the 1 negative charge. So ClO4, that's 4 oxygens per chlorate. IO4, 1 minus per iodate. BrO3, bromate. Look, the ones with the 4 oxygens start with per and with 8, and then you have the root in the middle. The ones that end in 8 have 3 oxygens with just the root and 8. The one with 2 oxygens, root and ite, nitrite. The one with 1 oxygen starts with hypo, root, ite, so hypochlorite. Like at the rule breakers, you have sulfate that has 4 oxygens, but a charge of 2 negative. Phosphate, 4 oxygens, a charge of 3 negative. Chromate, 4 oxygens, a charge of 2 negative. And silicate, 4 oxygens, a charge of 4 negative. For the rule breakers, we very rarely see the ites or the pers. Most of the ones that we use for rule breakers will be 8s.
I had a good question come up. The O at the end is O for oxygen. It's not a 0. So you're saying you have 3 oxygens, 4 oxygens, 1 oxygens, 2 oxygens, 3 oxygens, 4 oxygens, 3 oxygens. They're not zeros. They're O's. O's for oxygens. Okay, the next page. Per iodate. IO4, 1 minus. Per manganate. MnO4, 1 minus. Nitrite. NO2, 1 minus. Nitrate. NO3, 1 minus. Carbonate. CO3, 2 minus. Chromate. CrO4, 2 minus. Phosphate. PO4, 3 minus. Okay, the next list. Selenate. SeO4, 2 minus. Silicate. SiO4, 4 minus. Sulfate. SO4, 2 minus. Hydrogen phosphate. HPO4, 2 minus. Dihydrogen phosphate. H2PO4, 1 minus. Hydrogen sulfate. HPO4, 1 minus. Hydrogen carbonate. HCO3, 1 minus. Okay, last piece. Acetate. C2H3O2, 1 minus. Citrate. C6H5O7, 3 minus. cyanide. Capital C, capital N, 1 minus. Ammonium. NH4, 1 plus. Thiocyanate. SCN, 1 minus. Thiosulfate. S2O3, 2 minus. Peroxide. O2, 2 minus. So there are rules on how to read different things. So if we're talking about the rule followers, those are the ones with the 1 minus charge primarily. That's your bromate, perbromate, hypochlorite, chlorite, chlorate, perchlorate, iodite, periodate, permanganate, nitrate, and nitrite. It's hypo, root, ite if you just have 1 oxygen. It's root ite if you have 2 oxygens. It's root 8 if you have 3 oxygens. And it's per root 8 if you have 4 oxygens, with the charge always being a 1 minus. Okay, if you're wondering how to read the rule makers, these are the ones with a bunch of different charges. This is your chromate, your phosphate, your selenate, your silicate, and your sulfate. The name is based on the oxygens, but charge is on the element. So hypo blank ite has 2 oxygens. Blank ite has 3 oxygens. Blank 8 has 4 oxygens, and per blank 8 has 5 oxygens. You're going to place the root in front of, or in wherever the blanks are. You're going to add the chemical symbol that goes with the root in front of the O, and then the charge is based on your element. So Cr or chrome has 2 minus, P or phos has 3 minus, Se or selen has 2 minus, Si or silic has 4 minus, S or sulf has 2 minus. Okay, some additional rules are for hydrogen, you add a hydrogen, you remove a charge. For each hydrogen you add, you remove a charge. So if you're adding 1 hydrogen, you remove 1 charge. If you're adding 2 hydrogen, you remove 2 charges. Everything else stays the same. For carbon, it's never an ite, it's always an 8. It's the same as rule followers, except it has a 2 negative charge. And for thio, when you see the word thio for like thiocyanate or thiosulfate, you add a sulfur but remove an oxygen if possible. For acetate, citrate, ammonium, and peroxide, you just have to memorize them. You really just have to memorize all of these, but if you want to know the rules for how we're getting the names, here you go. But I recommend you understand the rules, but really just memorize the information.